On my mom's birthday, she looked me dead in the eyes and said the best gift I could give her was to disappear from her. So I did. My mom always favored my brother Ryan. He could do no wrong in her eyes. If he messed up, I was the one blamed. If he forgot something, she said I should have reminded him. He got her love, her pride, and her attention. I got silence, cold looks, and criticism. I spent years hoping things would change, hoping she'd see me and love me the way she loved him. No matter how hard I tried, it never happened. I did well in school, stayed out of trouble, helped with chores, but it was never enough. She made me feel like I was a burden just for existing. Her 50th birthday should have been a night of celebration. Family and relatives came over, and the table was full of food and drinks. I tried to blend into the background, smiling when spoken to, staying quiet, keeping my head down. I thought if I behaved perfectly, maybe she would let me be. When the toasts began, everyone lifted their glasses to wish her well. She smiled, laughed, and thanked them. Then she turned her eyes on me. Her smile faded, and with a voice clear enough for everyone to hear, she said, "The best gift Mia could give me is to leave me alone. If she disappeared, my life would finally have peace." The room went silent for a moment, then some people gave nervous chuckles, while others avoided looking at me. Ryan smirked into his drink. I felt my stomach twist so hard I thought I would throw up. The words cut deeper than anything she had ever said to me before. I didn't argue. I didn't cry in front of them. I just sat still, staring at my plate, burning inside while pretending not to care. But I knew something inside me had snapped. That night, when the guests had gone and the house was quiet, I packed my bag. Just a few clothes, some savings, and whatever I could carry. I didn't slam the door or wake anyone up. I didn't leave a note. I simply walked out. If her birthday wish was for me to vanish, then that's exactly what I was going to give her. For the first time in my life, I stopped begging to belong. I chose to leave. I took a bus to a town I had never been to before with almost no money in my pocket. The ride felt endless, and I kept staring out the window, trying to calm the storm inside me. Part of me wondered if I had made a mistake, but I knew there was nothing left for me back home. When I stepped off the bus, the air felt heavy and unfamiliar, but it was also the first time in my life I felt a taste of freedom. I found a small room to rent above an old shop. The walls were thin, the mattress was lumpy, and the place smelled faintly of dust, but it was mine. Every morning I forced myself out of bed before the sun came up to search for work. I cleaned motel bathrooms until my hands were sore and red. I waited tables in crowded diners where customers barely looked at me. I took any shift offered, no matter how exhausting, just to cover rent and food. Some days I barely scraped by, but I kept pushing forward. The nights were the worst. In that tiny room, the silence pressed down on me, and my mother's words echoed like a drumbeat in my head. "The best gift you could give me is to disappear." I heard them again and again, sharper than any knife. Lying on that mattress, staring at the ceiling, I often felt my chest tighten, as if the weight of her rejection was crushing me. I wanted to cry, to scream, to ask why I wasn't enough. But instead, I clenched my jaw and let the anger settle into determination. If she thought I was nothing, I would prove I could be something. The loneliness never left me. I walked home alone after long shifts, passing groups of friends laughing together, and I felt invisible. I longed for a hug, for someone to care if I made it through the day. But my family had made it clear I wasn't wanted. Ryan, on the other hand, lived comfortably. He had his college tuition paid, a car given to him, vacations handed to him like gifts on a silver platter. All the things I begged for, he got without even asking. Lying in my small room at night, I promised myself that one day they would regret throwing me away. One day they would see exactly what they had lost. Working at the diner was supposed to just be another job to help me get by. I spent most of my time carrying plates, wiping down counters, and cleaning up after long shifts. It wasn't easy, but it paid enough to keep my little room and buy groceries. One slow afternoon, the cook was overwhelmed with orders and asked me to help in the kitchen. At first, I was nervous, but he handed me a few ingredients and asked if I could put together a pie for the display case. I had baked a little before when I was younger, but it had always been dismissed as silly or unimportant at home. Still, I rolled up my sleeves and tried. The pie came out better than I expected. We cut a few slices for customers, and I watched from a distance as people tasted it. Their faces lit up, and soon they were asking if there were more. That moment sparked something inside me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had done something worth noticing. After that day, I began experimenting in the kitchen whenever there was free time. I tried cakes, cookies, and new pie flavors. I stayed up late at night in my tiny room with a notebook, writing down ideas and recipes I wanted to test. I wasn't just following instructions, I was creating. Each recipe carried a piece of me, and each time someone smiled while eating what I made, it felt like a small piece of my broken heart was healing. Customers started asking who baked the desserts, and when they learned it was me, they came back for more. I overheard people say things like, "You have to try the pie here," or, "The cake is the best I've ever had." Their words filled a space inside me that had been empty for so long. My boss noticed too. One evening, he pulled me aside and said, "You've got a real gift. You shouldn't let it go to waste." Those words stayed with me. No one in my life had ever encouraged me like that before. Baking became more than just a job. It became my escape and my therapy. On days when loneliness pressed hard on me, I poured everything into my recipe. When I mixed flour, sugar, and butter, I wasn't just making food. I was creating something beautiful out of the pain I carried. The act of baking gave me peace, a rhythm that quieted the noise of my past. The more I baked, the more I started to imagine a future I had never dared to dream about. I thought about having a place of my own, a kitchen filled with warmth, the smell of fresh bread drifting through the air. I pictured people walking in, not to judge or criticize me, but to enjoy what I had made. For the first time in my life, I let myself believe I could build something bigger, something that belonged only to me. After years of long hours and saving every dollar I could, I finally reached the point where my dream felt possible. I signed the lease on a small corner shop with old brick walls and dusty windows. It didn't look like much at first, but I saw what it could become. I painted the walls myself, scrubbed the floors, and brought in secondhand furniture. The day I unlocked the door and placed my first trays of bread and pies in the display case, I felt a pride I had never known before. It wasn't just a bakery. It was proof that I had survived. At first, business was slow. A few curious people stopped by, tried a muffin or a slice of cake, and left. But little by little, word began to spread. People started returning, bringing friends, and soon my shop was filled with chatter, laughter, and the smell of fresh bread. I greeted everyone with a smile, and they treated me with warmth I had once thought I'd never deserve. My bakery became more than a place to eat. It became a gathering spot, a small piece of comfort in people's busy lives. I hired a couple of workers to help as the business grew, and they quickly became more than employees. They were kind, dependable, and they stood by me through the toughest days. Regular customers learned my name, shared their stories, and treated me like family. For the first time, I felt surrounded by people who valued me not for what I was supposed to be, but for who I truly was. The walls of my bakery held the love and acceptance I had always longed for. While my life was growing brighter, I began to hear whispers about what was happening back home. Ryan, who had always been showered with attention and support, was struggling. He had wasted money on bad investments, spent carelessly, and leaned on my mother to bail him out again and again. The life that had been handed to him so easily was beginning to crumble. I didn't gloat, but I couldn't ignore the shift. For years, I had been the unwanted one, the failure in my mother's eyes, while Ryan was praised. Now, everything was changing. My bakery doors opened each morning to a line of smiling faces, while Ryan's world slowly fell apart. I kept working, kept growing, and let my success speak for itself. The contrast between us couldn't have been clearer. I was building something real, something lasting. And for the first time, I knew deep down that I was no longer the girl they had pushed aside. I was becoming someone they could never ignore. One busy afternoon, while I was arranging fresh loaves in the display, I heard the bell above the door ring. When I looked up, my stomach tightened. Standing there, as if he belonged, was Ryan. For a moment, I froze. It had been years since I had seen him, and I never expected him to walk into my bakery. He looked almost the same, but there was something different in his eyes, tired, restless, desperate. He glanced around the shop, taking in the crowded tables, the smell of bread, and the steady stream of customers. "Wow," he said, forcing a smile. "I can't believe this is yours. You've actually made something of yourself." His words sounded supportive on the surface, but his tone carried surprise, almost disbelief, as if he couldn't accept what he was seeing. I wiped my hands on my apron and kept my voice calm. "Yes, this is mine." I didn't invite him to sit, but he slid into a chair anyway, acting comfortable. At first, he tried small talk, asking about the bakery and pretending to be impressed. But it didn't take long before he revealed why he was really there. Leaning forward, he lowered his voice. "Look, I'm in a tough spot. I just need a little money to get back on my feet. You're doing well, you can spare some, right?" I felt the air tighten around me. The old part of me, the one that used to bend and break to please my family, stirred for a moment. But I pushed it down. I had worked for everything I had, and I wasn't about to hand it over to the brother who had always been handed everything. "No, Ryan," I said firmly. "I can't do that." His smile dropped, and his expression hardened. He leaned back, crossing his arms, and looked at me with the same contempt I remembered from our childhood. You know, you can put on this act all you want, but you'll always be the screw-up Mom said you were. Don't forget that. The words should have stung. Years ago, they would have torn me apart. But standing in my own bakery, surrounded by the life I had built, they didn't have the same power. Instead of breaking me, his cruelty only showed me how far I had come. I no longer needed his approval or hers. I met his glare with steady eyes, then turned away to greet a waiting customer. My silence said everything. Word about Ryan started reaching me little by little, carried through people who still knew my family. I never asked, but news always seemed to find its way to me. At first, it was small things. He had lost money in a bad investment. He was arguing with his wife. He was behind on bills. Then the stories grew darker. His debts were piling up, collectors were chasing him, and his marriage had fallen apart completely. The image of him as the perfect son was crumbling faster than anyone could hide. I heard that his wife packed her things and left after one too many fights about money. Ryan had tried to keep up his old lifestyle, spending like nothing had changed, but it caught up with him. Soon the word fraud was being whispered. He had been caught cutting corners, lying in deals, trying to cover the holes he had dug for himself. What once made him look successful was now dragging him into courtrooms and offices filled with lawyers. Through all of it, my mother stood by him. Linda drained her savings, pouring every dollar she had into fixing his mistakes. Retirement money she had spent years holding on to vanished almost overnight. She defended him, just as she always had, calling him misunderstood and unlucky, refusing to see the truth everyone else could see. Ryan had never been held accountable, and now it was too late for him to learn. I didn't say a word. I didn't reach out. I didn't offer advice or sympathy. I kept on with my life, serving customers, baking bread, and closing my shop at night with tired but steady hands. Still, whenever I heard another piece of his downfall, I couldn't help but think back to that night years ago. My mother's voice echoed in my mind, sharp and clear. The best gift you could give me is to disappear. I had given her what she wanted. I had vanished. And now, watching from a distance, I saw the family she chose crumble without me. Ryan, the son who could do no wrong, was drowning in the very life he had once been praised for. Linda, who pushed me away so she could hold him closer, was now sinking with him. I never celebrated their pain, but I didn't pity them either. When I thought of my mother's cruel birthday wish, I couldn't stop a small, grim smile from. They had made their choice long ago, and now they were living with it. The phone rang one evening as I was closing up the bakery. I almost didn't answer because the number was unfamiliar, but something made me pick it up. When I said hello, I froze at the sound of the voice on the other end. It was my mother. After more than 10 years of silence, she was calling me. Her voice shook, and I could hear the strain in every word. She was crying, struggling to breathe between sentences. She said Ryan was in serious trouble, worse than anything before. The fraud charges against him were real, and he was facing prison. He had drained everything she had, and now she was broke, desperate, and out of options. For the first time in my life, she didn't sound proud or dismissive. She sounded broken. "Mia," she whispered, her voice trembling, "you're the only one who can save us now." I stood there with the phone pressed to my ear, stunned by her words. I remembered the countless times she had chosen Ryan over me. I remembered the way she had looked at me with disgust on her birthday, telling me that the best gift I could give her was to leave her life. And I remembered how I had walked out that night, carrying nothing but my bag and my pain. Hearing her now, begging me to rescue the same brother she had once praised and defended, I felt no warmth, no urge to comfort her. Instead, a calmness settled over me. My voice didn't shake when I finally spoke. "You told me the best gift I could give you was to leave your life," I said slowly. "I've been giving you that gift ever since." There was silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing, faint and shaky, but she said nothing. Maybe she expected me to take it back, to soften, to forgive. But I didn't. I had waited my whole life for her to see me, to treat me as her daughter, and that moment never came. Now, when her world was collapsing, she only saw me as her last chance. I pulled the phone away from my ear and hung up. My hands didn't shake, and my heart didn't race. I felt steady, stronger than I had ever felt. For the first time, I was no longer the child begging for her. I was the woman who had built her own life, and I wasn't going to let her pull me back into her. The letters started arriving not long after that phone call. Some were handwritten, others typed, but all of them carried the same tone. My mother was desperate. She wrote about how Ryan needed me, how she had nothing left, how I was cruel for turning my back on family. She begged, pleaded, and when that didn't work, she tried guilt. She reminded me of childhood moments, twisted them into stories where she had done her best, and I was being ungrateful. She said I owed her, that no matter what happened, I was still her daughter. I read the first letter all the way through, then folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer. The next one, I barely glanced at before tucking it away. After a while, I didn't even open them. I stacked them in the back of my desk, hidden under old receipts. I never wrote back. Not once. Instead, I turned all of my energy toward the life I had built. The bakery grew busier each week, and with the help of my staff, it became more than just a place to buy food. People came to celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, and milestones. Neighbors met over coffee at my tables. Strangers left as friends. My workers became like siblings to me, showing up early, staying late, sharing laughter and small troubles, as though we were a family tied not by blood but by choice. Every smile from a customer, every thank you, every moment of connection reminded me that I hadn't lost everything when I walked away from my mother's house. I had gained the chance to create something new. And in that warmth, I realized that real family isn't always the one you're born into. Sometimes it's the people who choose to stand with you, who lift you up instead of tearing you down. There were moments late at night, after locking the doors, when I sat in the quiet and thought about the letters. I wondered if I should feel guilty, if refusing to help made me cold. But then I reminded myself, she had wished me away. She had made it clear I was never wanted. Now she only reached for me because I had something she needed. That truth kept me steady. I didn't need to scream or fight or prove anything to her anymore. My revenge wasn't loud or dramatic. It was in my silence, in the refusal to go back, in the simple fact that I had built a life without her. Sometimes the strongest revenge is not what you do, but what you no longer allow. News of Ryan's trial spread quickly. It was in the local paper, on the evening news, and passed from mouth to mouth in the town where we had grown up. His face appeared under bold headlines about fraud, lies, and money he had stolen. The boy who had once been praised for everything he did was now the center of a scandal. People who had once admired him couldn't believe what they were reading. My mother's name wasn't in the articles, but everyone knew she was tied to him. She had defended him for years, given him money, and told the world he was destined for greatness. Now, with every headline, her words came back to haunt her. Friends who had once admired her shook their heads. Old relatives whispered about her mistakes. At gatherings, people exchanged knowing glances whenever her name came up. The embarrassment clung to her like a shadow she couldn't escape. I wasn't there to see it firsthand, but the details made their way to me through people who still lived in that town. They said Linda hardly left her house anymore. They said she looked smaller, older, worn down by the shame of what Ryan had done. Once she had walked proudly, holding her head high, but now she kept her eyes low, afraid of the stares that followed her. What struck me most was the irony. The daughter she had pushed away, the one she told to disappear, had managed to build a good, honest life. Meanwhile, the son she adored, the one she gave everything to, had destroyed himself and dragged her down with him. People noticed. They remembered the way she had treated me, and they whispered about how things had turned out. Some even said aloud that I was the only one who had made something of myself. I didn't need to say a word. I didn't need to stand in front of her and list every cruel thing she had done. The truth was out in the open for everyone to see. Her golden son had turned to dust, and the daughter she discarded had become stronger than she ever imagined. When I heard about it, I felt no urge to gloat. I simply closed my bakery one evening, sat by the window with a cup of tea, and let the quiet wash over me. For the first time, I felt the weight of justice. Not the kind handed down in court, but the kind life delivers on its own. It was final, undeniable, and it belonged to me. It was a quiet morning at the bakery, the kind where the smell of fresh bread filled every corner and sunlight poured gently through the windows. I was behind the counter arranging pastries when the door creaked open. At first, I didn't look up. I was used to the steady flow of regular customers. But when I finally glanced toward the door, my hands went still. Standing there was my mother. I almost didn't recognize her. Time had carved deep lines into her face, and her shoulders were hunched as if the weight of the years pressed down on her. Her clothes hung loosely, and her eyes, once sharp and cold, looked dull and tired. She wasn't the proud woman I remembered. She looked small, fragile, and desperate. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The clatter of cups and the soft chatter of customers filled the silence between us. Then she stepped closer, her voice low and trembling. "Mia," she said, "I just want a chance to sit with you, to talk, maybe to ask for forgiveness." I studied her carefully. In another time, those words might have broken me. I might have rushed to fill the silence, to give her the comfort I had always begged for. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I had built a life far away from her, a life full of people who cared for me without conditions. Still, I wasn't cruel. I nodded toward a corner table. "You can sit," I said quietly. She moved slowly, lowering herself into the chair like her bones were too heavy to hold. I brought her a cup of coffee, setting it in front of her without another word. She looked at me with eyes full of hope, as if the gesture meant more than it really did. "You've done well for yourself," she said softly, glancing around the bakery. "I can see it. I'm proud, in a way I should have been long ago. Her words floated in the air, but I didn't reach for them. I stayed standing, wiping down the counter, keeping the distance I needed. Customers came and went, smiling at me, greeting me by name, and I felt the warmth of belonging in every interaction. She noticed it too. She could see that I had found what she had never given me. She tried again, her voice cracking. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking anyway. Can you forgive me? I met her gaze for a long moment. My heart didn't race, and I felt no anger, only clarity. She had made her choice all those years ago, and so had I. On your birthday, I said quietly, you asked me to vanish. I did. And that was the best gift I ever gave, to you and to myself. Do you think Mia made the right choice by walking away from her family and never looking back? Or should she have given them another chance despite all the pain? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more.